The courtroom was silent, except for the clicking heels of a young woman who thought she owned the world. Tiffany Chambers, wrapped in designer arrogance and entitlement, smirked as she faced a man she believed was beneath her, a black judge named Harold Benton. Cameras flashed. Reporters whispered. She didn't care. To her, money fixed everything. But as the judge looked down at her with calm authority, the air shifted. He wasn't just another name in her way. What would unfold in that courtroom would silence every whisper and remind everyone that dignity cannot be bought. Tiffany Chambers was the kind of person who never heard no. Born into luxury, her life sparkled with privilege. Private jets, charity galas, and carefully filtered social media perfection. Her family's fortune came from generations of power, and Tiffany believed that power made her untouchable. One evening, an altercation shattered her flawless image. After a night out, her reckless driving left a delivery worker injured. The media swarmed, but Tiffany laughed it off. Her lawyers would handle it as they always did. In her mind, the world bent to her will. The case drew public outrage, not just because of her actions, but because of her behavior. She mocked the victim online, flaunted her wealth, and treated the court summons like a minor inconvenience. When the day came, she strutted into the courthouse as if it were a red carpet event. Judge Harold Benton presided that morning, a man of composure and quiet strength. A Harvard graduate, decorated for community service, and respected by all who crossed his path. But to Tiffany, none of that mattered. She saw only his skin color and assumed he was out of his depth. What Tiffany didn't know was that Benton had seen countless versions of her before, people who believed their money placed them above morality. But this time he intended to teach a lesson the world would remember. The hearing began under a cloud of tension. Tiffany's posture oozed arrogance. She crossed her legs, flicked her hair, and scrolled on her phone as the charges were read. Her defense attorney tried to mitigate her behavior, but even he looked uneasy. Judge Benton maintained his composure. He observed, not just her actions, but the deeper layers of entitlement she wore like perfume. Every dismissive glance, every sarcastic smile painted a picture of a young woman insulated by privilege. Outside, the public watched. Clips of her behavior spread across social media. People were outraged, not just by the crime, but by her audacity to mock the system meant to hold her accountable. The courtroom had become a symbol, a collision of race, class, and justice. The prosecutor presented evidence, security footage, medical records, and witness accounts. Yet Tiffany barely paid attention. When the judge spoke, she rolled her eyes. And then came the moment that would define everything. When asked if she had anything to say for herself, she smirked. Though her words were polite, her tone dripped with disrespect. She made veiled comments about understanding her background and hinted that people like him couldn't relate. Gasps filled the courtroom. Cameras caught it all. Her father's influence couldn't save her now. The insult had crossed a line that money couldn't erase. Judge Benton paused. The room fell utterly still. His silence was heavier than any rebuke. In that moment, everyone could see it, the conflict between anger and grace in his eyes. Instead of reacting, he simply nodded and continued. His calmness unsettled her more than any lecture could have. Days passed before the sentencing. By then, public pressure was immense. Hashtags trended. People demanded accountability. Tiffany's world, once defined by control, was slipping through her manicured fingers. But she still believed her name would protect her. When the final day came, she arrived in the same designer outfit, ready to fake remorse for the cameras. What she didn't realize was that Benton's sentence would change her life and her legacy forever. The courtroom was packed. Every seat filled. Every lens pointed at the bench. Judge Benton read his notes slowly, methodically, each word deliberate. He acknowledged Tiffany's privileged background, her upbringing, her opportunities. Then his voice softened, tinged with sadness rather than anger. He spoke of equality before the law, of accountability as a foundation of justice. And then he delivered a sentence no one expected. Instead of prison time, Tiffany was ordered to spend a full year working in the same community she had mocked, the district's poorest neighborhood. She would serve at rehabilitation centers, community kitchens, and victim support groups. Her social privileges would be replaced with humility, labor, and service. The courtroom was stunned. This was not leniency, it was transformation. Benton's judgment wasn't about punishment. It was about awakening. Tiffany stood frozen. For the first time, her arrogance cracked. The world watched as her confidence melted into disbelief. The sentence was a mirror, forcing her to see the person she had become and the person she might still be if she chose differently. As she left the courtroom, escorted past reporters and flashing cameras, the smug smile was gone. What lingered instead was confusion, fear, and perhaps the first spark of realization. Months passed. Gone were the designer handbags and luxury cars. Tiffany now woke before dawn, wearing a volunteer's uniform, serving meals to the hungry. The cameras had faded, the tabloids had moved on, but the lesson had just begun. At first, she resented every minute, but slowly the faces she met began to change her. A single mother who worked 3 jobs to survive. A young man recovering from addiction who taught her about second chances. An elderly woman who reminded her of gratitude. Each story chipped away at her arrogance, revealing something buried beneath: empathy. By the time her sentence ended, Tiffany was no longer the same woman who had rolled her eyes in that courtroom. She didn't speak about people like him anymore. Because she understood now, Judge Benton hadn't punished her. He had liberated her. A year later, Tiffany appeared at a youth outreach event. Quiet, humble, changed. She spoke not as a celebrity, but as a cautionary tale. Her voice trembled as she thanked the judge who had shown her a truth her money never could. Respect, humility, and equality are the real measures of worth. The story of Tiffany Chambers became a symbol, shared in classrooms, newsrooms, and online spaces across the world. A reminder that justice, when guided by wisdom, doesn't just punish, it transforms. And as the narrator's voice fades, a single question lingers. When faced with the choice between pride and humility, which one defines you?